The theme song.
Well, I don't know why I'm listening tonight. I got a feeling that the cards just ain't right. I'm so salty, must not give in to rage. And I'm wondering what those rollers will say. Scrubs to the left of me, the cheaters to the right. Here I am, gonna roll a derby tonight. Gonna roll a derby tonight. Gonna roll a derby tonight.
Yeah. G'day everyone and welcome to another episode of the Hidden City Roller Derby. I am your host Simcof and I am here with the amazing West Coast roller whose time zone is 3 hours behind us, the rest of the world being Melbourne, Australia. How's it going, Nathan?
Not bad, mate, not bad. How about yourself?
Mate, I am absolutely stoked. It's getting close to the end of the year. The holidays are upon us. Well, it's a few weeks away. And there is a deluge of L5R news, previews, potentially leaked stuff. It just seems like more product than we can possibly imagine.
You know what there isn't, though?
What's that?
Is a restricted list update.
No, we're all waiting. Hopefully that restricted list update. They did say, like in the article that got released a few weeks back, well, like pre-Worlds, they said there would be a restricted list update in mid-December. So I think every Thursday I'm holding my breath when I wake up. I'm like, is the restricted list here? It's all I want for Christmas.
It is. That's what we get for Christmas, is a whole bunch of the cards we paid for to not be used anymore. It's good fun.
But in our minds, we think it's balancing the game, right?
Sure.
Yeah. That's the excuse. Cool. So huge show tonight. Lots of stuff to talk about. We've got World Cup. We've got the flashback tournament. We've got Stratagem games in Western Australia. We've also got, obviously, there's new previews. All sorts of stuff to talk about. It's been very, very busy L5R week. And just probably talk about the product, deluge of product and what that means for us next year. There's also a Grand Cote in Philadelphia that we can talk through. Very exciting. Unexpected results. Cool. So we do actually have an amazing guest, though. So what have you spent recently, Nathan, when you play L5R, when you don't have physical cards available, or, you know, it's just you and you've got no friends, you're Nigel no friends, what do you do?
Oh, I get my kids to play.
Ah, I see, you're lucky there. I don't know.
No, we hit Jigoku, of course. Everyone does Jigoku.
Yeah. Jigoku is one of those platforms that we've all played. Anyone who listens to this podcast more than likely has played more games on Jigoku, testing the craziest stuff and not putting in enough practice with their real decks they're trying to take to Worlds or other big tournaments. But it's an amazing platform that I think we've all used since it's, well, I guess for many months. I'm not exactly sure how long it's been out, but I know I've been playing with it for a long time myself. But it doesn't get made by itself. It's great when the community comes together and puts these projects together. And, you know, there is a group out there, the Ring Techie group, that builds this Jigoku platform. And there's many, many people in the Discord server. But of that many, many people, only a handful actually actively develop it and can be relied upon to submit their code changes. And there's a guy called Griffin who owns the project, but there is one man, one hero who has put in the effort for quite some time now to, I guess, lead the charge in development and coordinate all the rest of us hacker devs who are trying to help out and build this project. And, you know, every time there's a new pack, I'm sure he's sick of being asked, oh my God, when are we going to see the new pack online? When are we going to see the new pack online? You know, so, and that man...
Would it be accurate to call him perhaps the developer we need, not the developer we deserve?
Absolutely. And he is here joining us all the way from the United Kingdom, somewhere in the United Kingdom, a mystery location. But through the power of technology, he joins us. Jadiel, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How about you guys?
Fantastic.
Good.
It is currently at time of recording at 9:30 p.m. in Melbourne, Victoria. What time is it in the UK?
It's just coming up to 10:30 here.
In the morning. So
in the morning, yeah.
Quite comfortable time for both of us, really. We should do this more often. Thanks for joining the podcast. Really appreciate this. We're trying to, I guess, get some guests on the podcast beyond just the Kote winners, etc. Like, there's so many people in the community that contribute in ways other than innovating and breaking the brand new deck. And I think that you're a fantastic. You're probably our first, beyond Eric, the world champion. You're our first real guest on this show, I'm pretty sure. Can you think of any others, Nathan?
It depends. I mean, I think every other guest you've had on, you've dubbed a roller pretty well straight away.
True.
So.
Part of the show, but yeah.
Even with the one-odds.
So maybe you want to, I guess, a little bit of your background, Jadiel. This Jigoku project, were you involved with it from the very start? Or maybe, do you want to walk us through how you came to become involved in this project? And maybe for the audience that's not familiar with it, a bit about what the project is and what it isn't?
Okay, sure. So I wasn't involved right from the beginning of the project. I found out about L5R just after Gen Con last year in 2017. So when it was sort of released. And there'd already been, I think the Discord server had been running for a while then, and people had been doing stuff, and there was a TTS mod set up and things. And so I found out the game. I was very interested in it, but I have children. I'm a dad. I don't get as much time to play games, particularly in the evening, which is when local game stores all do their stuff. So I'd found with Netrunner, which was a game that I'd played a lot before, that the main way that I played was online. So I was interested to see if anybody was developing an online client for Legend of the Five Rings. So I did some asking around in the Discord, and somebody said, "Oh yeah, somebody's putting together a project." So then I got in contact with Griffin and sort of asked if I could help out. I'm not a coder by profession. I work at a university. I'm a lecturer in economics, and so I have some background in coding. I did it a lot when I was when I was small for fun. But I don't have any professional skills, so I was like, well, we'll try it out and see what it's like. I'd never done any JavaScript before, so that was a new thing for me. And so I started trying to understand this incredibly complex code base. For people who perhaps don't know, we didn't write Jigoku from scratch. It's a fork from another project called Throne Techie, which was designed to play the Game of Thrones LCG online. So somebody had written a whole bunch, written a code for that, and then Griffin forked it basically. That was the
first edition of a Game of Thrones, or second edition? First edition?
No, the second edition, I think.
Oh, second edition.
The second edition.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean that's called Throne Techie because it was also it's a kind of a spiritual fork from Jin Techie, which most people are probably familiar with, which is a big under a Netrunner client that people were playing online with. And so Cryogen, who's the lead dev on Throne Techie, he didn't like the language that Jin Techie was written in because it's a bit weird. And so he kind of took the idea and a lot of the server architecture and stuff and re-implemented it into JavaScript to write a Game of Thrones one. We didn't innovate anywhere near that much. We just basically took Throne Techie and copied it directly and then started messing with it to try and make it work better for Legend of the Five Rings.
Wow. So when you started, when did Jigoku actually kick off? Was it through Corset?
Yeah. So I think we released. I was actually just looking at this. We released the beta in maybe October, November time, 2017. So yeah. So it was just before. It was before the Imperial Cycle released, but not a long time before the Imperial Cycle released. So I think we did have all of Corset implemented just before Imperial Cycle started, and then we were straight into implementing that. Wow. So yeah, that was when it started. So yeah, we had a beta release where nothing was we just had the kind of basics of the game working. No cards were implemented, and some very brave souls kind of tried to play through it in manual mode, basically. And then we kind of gradually implemented cards to a better or lesser degree, depending. I mean, I was learning a lot as I was going through, so yeah, the early days I think probably were pretty rough. So I thank all the people who stuck with it and played with it through that, because there were a lot of bugs.
So I think it's not just yourself and Griffin who build and maintain and host this Jigoku platform, right? So what's the team look like? Is there other people that help out, or is it primarily just yourself?
So we have loads of people that come and help out, and that's a huge help, because there's no way. Well, I mean, I could do it all myself, but I just don't have time. So having, like, every time there's a new set of cards released, I kind of send out SOS signals, and we get a whole bunch of people coming in to help implement different cards. So the team's been very fluid. We've had people come, and as you often do with these community-based projects, we've had people come and go. We've had people just come in to help with implementing cards for like one pack or a particular set, and then they disappear off, and we don't see them again, which is fine. It's great. We really appreciate all the different contributions that we've had. So yeah, it's been pretty fluid. There are some people who've stuck with it kind of longer. So there's a couple of people who've been around since the beginning, who are kind of float in and out depending on how much time they've got. But yeah, it's a very fluid team.
Wow,
Awesome.
That's cool, man. It's so great to have yourself to be actually dedicated to provide that sort of long term looking after this project. Are you excited every time a new set comes out? Like, have you already begun to try and when these new previews come out and you see these new mechanics, like, say, for example, composure, like, when you see these previews, you automatically thinking about, how am I going to do this?
Yeah, very much. So composure was fine, because that one wasn't too difficult. But like, when I see cards like what's it, Miyako's Undertaking, then I break out in cold sweat. Or Duty as well was another one that I was like, how, what is this, cancel framework events? How on earth are we going to make that work? So
okay, yeah. So you bring up something interesting there, right? You talk about canceling framework events. So
yeah,
probably because you're implementing this game, in a very technical fashion, it's not about sitting at the table and having an argument however the rules work, right? And you're having to implement all the different framework steps. I would imagine you would have to get like way too technical and really, really extremely anal about understanding how this rule set actually works.
Yeah, very much so. And sometimes I feel like it's it feels far too much in that direction. And I think in some senses we're really lucky, because I have a lot of interesting to me email back and forth with Tyler at FFG. And he's really supportive actually of what we're doing, and he is very patient with me, and we go through all these different as you say in very strict detail of exactly which window we're in or whatever. And he's really good. So if he's listening, shout out to Tyler. He's fantastic.
Yeah, he's done good work across the board, really. So far, everyone seemed pretty impressed.
Yeah,
I mean, well,
he's just a fantastic guy, and I think he's breathed new life into a game that was doing quite well, and then he's been able to, I guess, provide a lot of leadership over the last 6 months or however long it's been, and all the previews we're seeing. I love the direction that he seems to be taking the game in. It's very interactive sort of style, and I'm sure he's probably one of the people that are helping make sure there's more regular communication with the community.
For sure. I mean, it's in their interest though to have a project like Jigoku going well and going smoothly. Though, I mean, realistically, if you didn't have it there, the community wouldn't be anywhere near as strong as it is. The game wouldn't get played. It wouldn't get as much hype. People just don't have the time to run off into stores all the time these days and catch up. I think it's kind of surprising that any game that gets released these days, I think, doesn't have a little bit of online support. Like, you almost have to these days. Like, you have to have those resources. If you didn't have guys like Jigoku sitting there cooking it up, where would you be?
So the listeners, right, they're probably thinking about Jigoku, and now that they realize, they're getting a little bit of a look behind the curtains and understanding how this thing, how the sausage is made. In your time, like, just in terms of, let's think about specific cards. You said Duty. What other cards have just been an absolute nightmare in terms of, making work?
Oh, wow. So back in the core set, Yokuni took me a long time to get right. I mean, anything that copies stuff is really difficult, because you can't just you can't. I mean, in terms of when you're coding it, you can't just copy stuff straight over because all the references point to the wrong place. So you need to make sure that all lines up. And so that he's caused me issues like over and over again because every time they release some new thing, then I can make it work, but then you're like, but can you copy it? No, he can't. It doesn't work if you do that. So he's caused me a lot of stress. And yeah, the Mirror's Gaze was another big one. I basically rewrote the entire game engine. And in fairness, okay, it wasn't just because of that card. There were changes that I wanted to make anyway, but then when they published it, I was like, I can't actually implement this without making these changes. It was a
catalyst.
Indeed, yeah. It pushed me towards doing that, but like the tests that I had to write for the Mirror's Gaze were crazy. There's like all these different edge corner cases where you have to make sure that it's doing the right thing.
It's really bizarre because in competitive play, that card's almost invisible. Like it's almost never played. I mean, it is played obviously a lot in casual because lots of memes, lots of laughs with that card. But like, it's almost never played in competitive play, and it's probably. Would you say that was one of the cards that took the longest to get right?
I mean, in that I had to rewrite everything. Yes, it was. And as I say, it's not completely fair to attribute it just to the Mirror's Gaze, but it is a bit frustrating that it never gets played because you're like, I spent hours and hours and hours doing that, and actually, it doesn't get used very much. I'd feel better about myself if I saw it played like a lot in online.
Do you actually see stats? Do you keep any statistics, or is it a little bit tricky with that engine to keep statistics?
So we do keep some statistics, but because Griffin is the one who runs the server, he has access to all of that. So I don't get to play with the stats very much, which is unfortunate. I'd like to do more with that.
It's interesting because just in terms of like what information you would be able to, if you were to group and aggregate this information, what you could actually report back on. Because I feel like it's totally fine to, given the nature of the tool, to kind of give the community some insights about what clans are most commonly played every time there's, during different months or different, metas, if you will. But I think that you're going down as like, there's a slippery slope if you start doing like leaderboards and that sort of stuff, if it's not clearly upfront.
Well, I mean, I think you have to be a bit careful, particularly if you start doing like individual win-loss records and that kind of thing, because at the moment, there's already, like, if you read the lobby in Jigoku, you'll hear people complaining about people leaving games without conceding or not saying GG or all kinds of stuff. And once there's actual statistics, then people are far more incentive to do that kind of behavior. So yeah, I'm not sure if it would make the community better to have that stuff available. I suspect it might make things even more toxic. So
I think
you have to be very careful.
We do have, I guess, these Discord League tournaments and other tournaments organised by different people that use Jigoku as the client, and I think they track their own stats and it's very public out in the open, and that's probably totally fine. But I think that if you start having Jigoku top 10.
We have been talking about perhaps doing a bit more in terms of being able to integrate that. So using like authentication tokens so that you can just get a token for whatever tournament you're in, and then Jigoku will automatically match you against the right person and report all of your report the result of the match automatically. And there's some potential there to be able to record like more data. So you could look at what cards people are using, and then you could, for example, for a season of Discord, you could look at what cards were most commonly used, how playing a card affected your win percentage. Or there's all kinds of interesting things that you could potentially do if that takes off. But I need somebody to pick up and run with it at the moment. I'm not sure. These things, we always have lots more ideas than we ever actually get around to implementing. So
on that is, I imagine that there are a heap of ideas about new features. Is there any potential new features we might see over at some point in 2019 that you would want to share? Anything that you're working on, at least? Maybe it won't happen, but at least you potentially might happen.
Yeah, so there's stuff that we're actually really close to releasing. So big new complete update of the UI, which should be has been kind of ready to come out for ages, and the person that's working on it just needs to finish it off. So that will move things around a lot, so that instead of, so at the moment you're kind of in 3 lines. So you've got like your province, and then your stronghold, and then your line of characters. And what that does is it moves it to 2 lines instead, so the cards can be a bit bigger. And we've also then moved all the rings to the center of the table, because that's the way that people tend to play with them in real life. And that allowed us to put in like a conflict skill total indicator as well on the board, so it makes it much easier to see like what the skill totals are, and what's happening with rings and things. And rings, when you claim them, actually move to above your stronghold, so you can see a lot more easily what you've claimed and what your opponent's claimed, without having sort of this box. It's just the same all the time. So that'll be really exciting when it comes out, I think. The other thing that there's 2 other features that I'm working on in terms of UI, which are me rather than somebody else. And one of those is like a mouse over, so that you can see all the different effects that are affecting a card. So like often it happens where somebody's attacking with 2 characters with the same title, and then they play Banzai on one of them, and you're like, which one is it? Was it that one or this one? So that mouse over then should be able to tell you whether they've Banzai'd one of them or the other one, or they split it between the 2. Or whatever, and just help you keep track of what effects are on cards. And then the last one that is actually ready to go, and I'm not sure when it will release, should be very soon, is an indicator on the cards telling you whether or not you've used the ability of that card or not. So you've got like a little, I don't know if you've seen the new tokens that they've just released, I think in one of the recent...
activation tokens. I got some when I was in LA.
Yeah, so we've implemented that graphic, that image on cards, so that it will turn, it's red when it's been used and green when you can still use it, basically. So that helps you to keep track of what's on the board and what cards have been used and haven't been used and that kind of thing. So that's some of the stuff that we've got that is actually, it's not just ideas, that's actually implemented and should be coming out very soon.
That's awesome. That'd be super handy. Is there any out of curiosity, any plan to sort of have current force like political or military totals on the cards? Because that's tripped me up many times, not having any idea or forgetting who I've used an ability on. Or
right, so we would like to do that. We haven't quite worked out the again on the mouse over. It was political military is, but it would be nice to have it like on the card so that you don't need to mouse over it, so it is there. But we're still working out the best way to do that.
Very cool. All right, what do you think? Just like reflecting, I guess this is a opportunity to, I guess, reflect on all of the efforts over the last year and a bit. What's kind of be your proudest moment during this whole project?
Oh, wow, that's difficult. I mean, I think when we first released it and we got it all to work, that was a big moment for me, because as I say, I'd never done JavaScript before. I was, when I was doing it, I wrote particularly a lot of kind of the timing engine. I'd kind of rewritten from scratch, and so seeing that all work and seeing people playing it, and particularly I think when it got used for the second season of the Discord League, they decided to move away from TTS and use Jigoku instead. That was a really big moment for me. I was really proud that you kind of had all these people playing. I'd never had the feeling of people using stuff that I'd made before, so yeah, that was a really good feeling.
Yeah, I imagine that must have been amazing. I was actually a tabletop simulator user to begin with, and I thought that, TTS, I felt like it simulated the game a little more because it was more tactile, etc. But then I realized that a Jigoku game you could play very quickly, and it did the rules for you, and you didn't have to, there was so much manual stuff to do in TTS, and even though the board looks really, really pretty and gorgeous with like the greenness and the 3D-ness of it all, it's really impractical. Like, it's really hard to navigate. So I think Jigoku became the tool du jour for L5R players. It's great.
Yeah, and I would love for Jigoku to look as good as TTS, but unfortunately we can't manage it. I mean, I think what I found frustrating watching TTS was that you had to have a judge there all the time to make sure that everybody was playing the rules right. Yeah. And even with that, sometimes the judge would miss something and the players would miss something, and then you'd realize 2 phases later that you didn't do something, and then you had to go back and fix stuff. And I was just like, shouldn't be like this.
So really, you've
have something doing the game for you.
You have become the ultimate global judge of L5R.
Yeah, well, it does feel like that sometimes, and that can be quite. If I'm honest, it feels really weird, because you've got all these people who are basically playing with the way that I think the game should work, and I think I've been lucky in that it hasn't like caused issues. as much as it could have done, largely because, as I say, I think the FFG rules team have been fantastic, and they're really good about making rulings in a pretty timely way. Tyler will appear in Discord every now and again to tell us how things work, and that really helps because it means that I'm not trying to defend my personal interpretation of the rules from lots of angry people who all think it should work a different way. I think that only happened once with like changing control of attachments. There was a thing where it got a bit ugly and suddenly everybody said Jigoku did it wrong, and so I'm glad that hasn't happened more.
That was the talisman debacle.
Yeah, so talisman, whether or not you can calling in favors back a talisman that has already been calling in favors, I think it was, say, or Karadar it back or whatever. Because Tyler decided it worked the way that I said it, so I felt vindicated at the end of it.
Nice.
I think the thing is, though, the only way you get to having that much of an understanding of the rules, it's not just about playing like hundreds of games. It's having to like actually code in how they work and like look how it when you're creating those little JavaScript files, it's like, hold on a second, if I code it this way, that's going to contradict this thing, and all the moving pieces.
Well, and I think it like when you have to code stuff, then you all of a sudden hit a lot of the corner cases that I don't think are obvious when you're playtesting it or when you're even playing with it. And so a lot of the spoilers, we come up with all these rules questions straight after they come out that don't seem to have been thought about that much in playtesting. So yeah, I think FFG should just make me a playtester, and then I could implement everything in advance, and I could tell them where it all doesn't work, and that would work brilliantly.
I hardly agree.
Be careful what you wish. Careful what you wish for. Next year, I think you're in for it. You got Children of the Empire, and then every single clan pack reportedly. So
and probably probably like a couple of arcs as well if they keep to that. So that's
and Children of the Empire is a big set as well. It's not it's not just like a clan pack size on it. It's almost like a full cycle in a box.
I have a feeling that they're not going to spoil. Like, it might be the thing where before the product actually comes out, there might still be a few cards that haven't been seen.
Well, I mean, that's certainly been true with a lot of the recent sets. Like where I remember with Underhand of the Emperor, as you said, like I had people saying, "When's it going to come out? When's it come out?" And I didn't even know what the cards were yet. So I was like, I have no idea, because if the cards I haven't seen are like a Miyako's Undertaking or a Mirror's Gaze, then we'll either have to release the pack without having that card implemented, or it's going to take a while for me to. Thankfully, it wasn't. Things from Underhand the Emperor were all pretty straightforward, and so we got it out fairly quickly. But you just never know.
Have you had to release a pack or or one of the expansions, clan packs, etc., without all the cards?
No, we haven't yet. We've managed to get them all out, and again, like we aim to get them out by street. But I think we have had them all out within. I think the one that was delayed the most was a week after street date, in the middle of the elemental cycle, where people just began to burn out, and there just wasn't enough manpower to keep up with all the cards that we were getting to implement.
And how do players give you feedback? You said this occasionally. There's angry players complaining about cards that don't work.
I get a lot of pings on Discord. I get a lot of PMs on Discord. I kind of occasionally keep an eye on the Jigoku lobby to see what people are complaining about there. The best place, that's the place that I see bug reports earliest. I mean, it would be great if they all came to GitHub, but going to GitHub and making an account and actually writing one is like a bridge too far for a lot of users. So I get complaints in the lobby instead. So that's where I get most of my feedback, from Discord or the lobby or GitHub.
So tell me, like, we'll wrap up the Jigoku conversations, but that lobby is an interesting place to be. It's strange because it's like for the platform, for the Jigoku website, there's like this one weird chat window which is just like at the front, and it's just a chat, right? Like, it's just people type text and that's it. It's not clear like what it's necessarily intended for. So do you read that often? Do you keep abreast of what's going on?
I confess that recently I've been busier with other things, and so I've not kept on it. But yeah, usually I try and keep tabs on what people are talking about, particularly after new stuff's released, where I think it's more likely that we'll get bugs. So once everything's stable and I'm pretty sure that all the cards are working, then I tend to not watch it so much. But after we've released a pack, I tend to keep up with what everybody's saying there, just so that I can find out if stuff isn't working.
I think we're at a pretty stable point at the moment, so most of the conversation is about like rage quitters.
Rage quitters is the predominant topic of conversation all the time. But yes.
Well, see, I don't know about everyone else, but if someone rage quits on me, I consider that it's like a higher level of win. Standard victories, and then I've made them rage quit. That's like a victory and a half. It's like 11.
Everybody saw it.
Yeah, it should. But you're like the only person I've ever heard of that actively seeks out criticism on the internet for something they've created.
Yeah, Simcof punishment.
You're a brave soul.
So we do have a few tournaments that are going on at the moment that are using Jigoku. One of them, which I'm very excited about, is the World Cup. Have you guys been following the World Cup recently? No.
I have not. I've not seen much of it at all, unfortunately.
I've caught bits and pieces, but I haven't been following it like every game.
I feel like we're about to find out all about it.
Well, I want to highlight one game. So just to know where we're at is officially what's been officially reported is we're currently at top 8. So there's the semi. Well, we're about to go to top 4. So we've got top 8, top 4, and then the finals. And ideally, it's all going to wrap up before the new year. So that means there's a lot of games in the next few weeks, like across December. There's going to be a lot of games being cast, and they're all available. All you need to do is go to on the Global Discord League. If you go to the League Media channel, you'll see them available, and just check them out. They're pretty good casting, pretty good, and they're fantastic games. I think Piedmonton's has cast almost all of them, but there's and Tenerum has joined in. But I think that as we get closer, we'll still see those guys cast. But I think we might see some other co-casters come in and add a bit of colour to the stalwarts. But we've got Netherlands versus Switzerland. We've got Canada versus Germany. That series is actually over, and I want to talk about that one in a moment. Singapore versus Sweden. France versus Greece. Some of these matches are already over at time of recording, but they haven't been officially updated on the bracket, so we'll just presume that we won't give any spoilers. But there was this amazing match that was the Canada versus Germany match, and it was Scorpion Mirror, right? And it was Wydwen playing against Nomen.
And was first thing with my head,
and it was like Wydwen's playing a
maybe we should shave it all off.
Kyuden Baishi deck.
That was my.
Oh really?
Yeah. And he was playing against Nomen, who was playing a more traditional City of the Open Hand. They were both playing Seeker of Air, but Wydwen was playing KB, splashing Crane. And I'm going to link to it in the podcast so you can watch how it ended. I won't spoil how it ended because it was just a absolutely phenomenal game. But on turn 2, Wydwen was on a very, very low amount of honor, like down to 2 honor. And there was a lot of Solbion reproaches that were keeping him in the game. And it was one of those games where you're like, KB should not be performing this well against City of the Open Hand. And they're both killers. Like, you know, Wydwen's won some global Discord leagues, and Nomen's always ultra competitive, and he's always in, you know, top 16 or just he's always a contender, right? So it's 2 amazing Scorpion players facing off against each other. And the maths involved in those games and just the crazy moves. There were just absolutely crazy, like, Aramoro on Aramoro action. It was just phenomenal. And the card choices Wydwen makes, that guy he's a wizard, right? Like, he's, you know, Nomen's playing a very solid, you know, tested sort of Scorpion strategy, Scorpion playstyle. And Wydwen throws that in the bin and is just going crazy with charges and all sorts of stuff. It's just a different world.
I really enjoy those kind of decks. Anything that's sort of a bit left field, like particularly when they do well. Anyone that chooses like your non-typical restricted list choice or like charge instead of Forged Edict, for example. It's really good to see Like I suppose the underdog cards will take a win or do very well.
I like it when somebody's figured out how to make those sort of lesser used cards really work, really sing. I think that's exciting. Jank for jank's sake is fun in casuals, but like it doesn't, in my opinion, shouldn't really have a place in competitive play. But if you've worked out how to make that jank into competitive, fodder, then I think there's some really exciting matches. And it was just, I guess, with this World Cup, you've got some of the best players in the world, and they're not limited by having to pay for a flight to go to the Midwest. Like they could just play online. So you're just seeing some amazing games, and I would highly recommend watching the remaining games and really getting out there, because I think it's an event. I think there's a lot learnt about how to run that event, and I think it's been mostly run very, very well. There's some timing challenges because the World Cup, L5R World Championship kind of hit just as the World Cup bracket was starting. It kind of lost a bit of, its oomph, a bit of its relevance, because people then started concentrating on, the world champs. So I think it might be, if we were to run it again next year, then you might time it a little differently. But on the whole, I've absolutely loved the tournament. Have you guys watched many of the games at all, or just been a bit hard to catch them?
I've caught a couple, but I haven't watched. I wouldn't say I've watched a lot of them, and I haven't managed to keep up with who's progressing and things. But the games I've watched have been really, really good. I really enjoyed them.
Yeah, I get a lot out of watching those kind of games. I only get to watch now and then. I'm more of a podcast guy on the train or whatever else. But the games I do watch are really, really interesting, and I find them to be very big learning opportunities. Like, you don't often, when you live in a tiny, tiny little corner of the planet like I do, you don't really get to see the really high-end guys playing, or the really top-level contenders. I mean, the best player I could theoretically catch up with would be some low-bar guy like Simcof here. And even that's pretty rare. So, seeing how those games roll out, like being able to see the game even between Shen and Eric at Worlds, like that's obviously been a very popular game to watch now, is awesome. And all those games are the same. You get so much out of watching them that you otherwise wouldn't get to do, and they're enjoyable to watch as well. Like, it's good viewing. The risk of sounding like an enormous nerd. We're not here to be nerds, of course.
Of course not. Have you guys been following along with this cool sort of like create a card initiative that they've been doing with the Unicorn?
I have.
So,
and I'm a
you
massive
have?
fan.
You want to fill us in on where we're up to? I think we're just about to make another choice, right?
We are just about to make another choice. So at the moment, we've obviously gone Unicorn at the beginning. Then we went to Utaku for the, I think everyone was angling for their Battle Maidens. We then went to Balanced Stats and High Glory was the call, which a lot of people were moderately disappointed about. But Unicorn got all those honor cards, so it's fine. Then the latest one is basically an array of what I suppose theme of card it is. So there's Stable Master, for example, and one of them was actually a Ronin. Is one of the choices. You could have the Unicorn, Unicorn.
Choices up here. It's like, what identity will our samurai embrace? A preserver of purity, a cultured mediator, believer in blessed virtue, a worldly Shiotomi, or an otaku stable master. I guess the worldly Shiotomi, is that the Ronin?
Well, maybe that they go into more detail for that, but one of them's actually a Ronin. So I feel like, everybody's already said, no, we want otaku, we want stats. So they're like, well, how about we don't give them a family or a lord? What if we kick them out? And I'd be curious to see if they're on Team Wandering Ronin, or if they've still actually got the purple border. They'd have to have purple border, presumably.
They chose Unicorn, right?
Yeah, well, you get what you're given if you're Unicorn. Beggars and choosers and all that.
Yeah. Well, I think once the Unicorn pack comes out, they're already feeling like they're in a much better position now than they ever have been. I think if Jadiel had looked at the stats on number of Unicorn wins in the first 6 months of L5R, it will probably have not been a high number.
I think it was actually the Imperial cycle was the worst, because they actually got relatively worse over the course, because they got like almost nothing during the Imperial cycle, apart from Windswept Year. Was the only Unicorn card that really saw any play. Or there were other cards that saw play, but they weren't very good.
They saw play because they had to.
Well, yeah, because you only have so many slots, so like Mutajura and stuff. So yeah, the wing I think dropped from core into Imperial, and then recovered a bit with the Phoenix pack, and then got a lot better in Elemental. So I've been really enjoying the community design thing as well, partly because I'm a Unicorn player, so that's increased my interest in what's going on. But I think it's a really cool idea, just getting the community involved in doing design, and I think it's another step of innovation.
What attracted you to the Unicorn clan?
There was a bit of skepticism. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, so I played a little bit of original L5R when it first came out, like in 1996.
Mm-hmm.
And so I played Unicorn then, probably because Cavalry was just crazy broken at the beginning of the game.
Komoku.
Yeah. Well, no, I think it was before that, but just like the way that you had to declare defenders first, and then you'd say, okay, so where are you defending? Right. Well, I'm going to attack everywhere else then. And that's crazy. So I kind of I didn't play a huge lot. I played like through the first. I played Unicorn, and then I played a bit like they introduced like Enlightenment victories or a monk deck that was Enlightenment victories. So I played a bit of that, and then I stopped playing. So yeah, so Unicorn were kind of my thing back then, and so I was interested in them in core. I kind of switched to Phoenix because Unicorn was just not very fun to play with. But now I'm having fun with Unicorn again. So
awesome. Excellent. I'm really loving the artwork as well. Like just
it's awesome.
They've got the Unicorn book across the Burning Sands, and I like that for each of the different clans, they're really with those full art cards as you extend them out, or alternate art cards, I guess they are, for the Unicorn. They're really developing art styles which are specific to the clans, which kind of gives them more of an identity. And you've got like this Utaku battle steed. It's like the wide open plains. There's this horse and the samurai there, so it's stable hand, I guess. But it's kind of lots of water strokes. Like it looks like it's almost watercolors in a way, and it just looks really super cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
There was a bit of a controversy. I see some people are a bit concerned about the old card choices they were making. I think Wayne over here in Australia, he pointed out that last time he recalls AEG doing something like that. There was they ended up with a Mantis Clan Tenku non-human ninja.
Oh yes.
He posted the card, and he was a little cautious, I suppose, a little skeptical of the choices they were making. He was moderately afraid. I personally would love to see another Mantis Clan non-human.
I think they've been a little bit more sensible with the way they've chosen the options they've presented us. I think any of the options could kind of combo together, and they could probably make it work.
Yeah, and similar with the story choices, it's something that AEG I think pushed massively, and FFG have perhaps learned from that a little bit, and have had a very measured approach to make sure that you don't end up with crazy things happening with elephants and things.
Yeah, I think the story is really important in the game. Like I think that's one of the unique sort of selling points about the game. But you're right, I think they've been just slowly introducing more choices, but not kind of putting it over the top and making it front and center. I think that next year we'll probably see a bigger major conflict that we can all connect with, because there's not like, well, at least not that I'm aware of. I mean, the big thing that seems to be pushing towards is Tuturi's got to tell everybody that, hey, the Emperor's abdicating, and the second son's going to take over. So I imagine maybe there's going to be like a first son, second son conflict, and that will be the main story next year. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it looks I don't know. It's certainly going that way, but I think they're taking it easy on the story this whole first year. I think because they want to establish their version of Rokugan. Sort of, they very gradually show everybody that it's mostly the same. But then there's obviously these very, very key differences that they slide in here and there that down the line could have really, really big ramifications.
Yeah. So I think the last, I guess, major piece of L5R stuff that's going on, news that's going on, is there was in Philadelphia, there was the first Grand Kote that big event. I think there was 70 odd players that turned up. There was 2 day. There was two. I think there was a 2-day tournament. Yeah. So we got our first 6-0 Hatamoto. So I guess there's the new rules of Hatamotos now. You have to go undefeated through day one. And to nobody's surprise, Mine's Desire went 6-0 with his dragon deck and won again. And then won again on day 2 and took the whole tournament down. And I think that if you want to find out a bit more detailed version of those events, then you can listen to the next Jade Throne podcast. And I think Anil's going to be on it and talk through the whole tournament. So we don't need to retread it here, other than to say it says something about the skill gap in this game where you've just got, the same player winning, many, many events over and over again. And yeah, there's on one hand you could say it's with the same deck, but what I would say is that none of the other Dragon players have managed to achieve what he has, and if you look at that top cut, that top 16, there was 7 Scorpion, 6 Crane, 2 Dragon, and 1 Unicorn. So it's not like Dragon are going super deep in these tournaments, just 1 or 2 players. Like in this case, you had a Neil and a Rash, who's a New York absolute beast of a Dragon player. But, it's, I don't know. Have you guys got any thoughts on that whole, I guess, clan competitiveness versus, players just being really good?
I think it's a really interesting sort of relationship as well, though, because you can have a player who's super good, like a Neil, go along and constantly do well, as you've said, with a deck that maybe not everybody's doing as well with, but obviously his consistent wins, wasn't he like 6 times Hatamoto last year? Yeah, like it's ludicrous, right? So I wonder, though, how much that realistically sways not only the stats, obviously it does, but also like public opinion in general. And as a result of the public opinion, how much that influences the direction that FFG are taking their cards in future and sort of the where they push them. Because, the only thing they got after Dragon doing quite well was something crappy like Mitsu. And, so they're suffering as a result of his expertise. And I think that's maybe unfair that just because they've got such a good player that they get these rubbish cards.
Is there are you aware of any giant UK tournaments happening next year? Are they doing another Birmingham tournament?
I don't think it's been confirmed, but I would be very surprised if they don't do another Ankete at the Games Expo in Birmingham.
Did you go to that this year?
I didn't, because I was actually in Japan this year from January through to September. So there weren't any tournaments.
No L5R scene in Japan?
No, I'm afraid not.
You could get in on that sick Pokemon scene.
It's actually not anywhere near as big as you'd expect in Japan either. I'm very too surprised that there's just it's much bigger, I think, here or in America than it is in Japan.
Doesn't shock me too much. Yeah. So we've got plenty of tournaments coming up next year, but I guess the one last thing I want to plug about the World Cup is this will be the last sort of, now that we've done Philly, this is the last tournament in this meta. And I think that, you were mentioning this earlier, Jadiel, that Children of the Empire, like that's a really big set. I think it's the biggest set we've seen since Core by a long way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's going to be really interesting. You'll be able to see this sort of meta, and I feel like the World Cup will be the bookend. It'll kind of say, this is the end of Phase 1 of L5R. And I think next year, Children of the Empire, it really does signal that is such a big, chunky set with so many new cards injected in the pool. It kind of will be the beginning of the next phase of the game.
Yeah. I'm not sure. How much time is the meta even going to get to settle next year, realistically? You're talking, at least 6 different sets, one of them being Children of the Empire. So once every 2 months, I'm not sure you could even have a meta at that point. There's just going to be this constant turnover of cards, and poor
it'll be exciting,
just coding away online.
Yeah, it'll be exciting, and then hopefully it sounds like it's going to be very difficult for things to get stale. I think what is good, that from what it appears, we think that Children of the Empire will come out in January, and then the next release will be March for Unicorn. That's all hearsay, but there was some gaming store catalog or something that somebody posted where that is apparently the dates. If that is the case,
it's official that they're both in Q1, so it would make sense that one of them's at the beginning and one of them's at the end, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Okay. Guess so. Yeah, it's true.
That's why he's the man that educates people.
Yeah. But it does mean that I think hopefully if it's closer to the beginning of January, then we'll have 2 months to digest this really thick Children of the Emperor set. And, by the end of that 2 months, we'll be complaining that Clan X is broken and Clan Y hasn't got any good cards in 10 years. But I think we'll have a bit of time to explore that. But then I think once the Unicorn pack comes out, it's just going to be one set after another for the rest of the year, and it'll be non-stop, frantic pace of new cards. Cool. Well, Jadiel, thank you so much for joining us today. I think our listeners are going to love listening to hearing all about how the Jigoku platform works and all the work you've done and your sort of interesting journey from economics professor to community code master.
None at all. It's been my pleasure.
Brilliant. And again, Nathan, as always, West Coast Rollers, always a pleasure to have you. And until next time, this has been the Hidden City Roller Derby, and we'll talk to you soon.